So since you started with all the Pizmonim, I thought I would start with one too, off the top of my head. From Dero Yikra, it says, Derosh Navi Ulami, which means seek out my sanctuary and my hall. Ve'ot Yeshai Aseh Imi, and a sign of salvation you should make for my people. Netas Sorek Betoch Karmi, plant a branch in the middle of my vineyard. She'eshavad b'nei ami, pay attention to the cries of my people. So when we read this Pizmon, there's a word that stands out. It says Netas Sorek Betoch Karmi. It's translated, plant a branch in the middle of my vineyard. But in the entire Torah, Sorek is never used as branch. Sorek means whistle. So I decided that it would be interesting to see what the Torah says about whistling. Now, when the Rebbe spoke about why whistling, he quoted a verse about King David dancing and turning upside down, and he wasn't embarrassed that people were looking at him because of the joy that the Aaron came back to Yisrael. But it doesn't mention whistling there. As a matter of fact, it mentions the sound of the shofar. It has nothing to do with whistling. So I looked and I found that nowhere in the 5 books of the Torah does it mention whistling. However, it is mentioned in a famous medrash that everybody knows, or at least they know part of the medrash. And that is, at the start of the 10 plagues, Moshe and Aaron produced Sephardeia, a single frog. And everyone knows that they beat the frog and more frogs came out of it. Except that's not what the Medrash says. The Medrash says that the frog itself whistled and called all the other frogs in Egypt to him. So even though it was one of the plagues, it was also one of the first steps towards redemption. And we find in the Torah that it says in Yeshayahu, V'nasa nes l'goyim, and Hashem will make a sign for the nations, mirachok, even from far away, v'sarak lo miksei haaretz, and he will whistle from one end of the earth to the other, v'hinei mehera kal yavo. And then the redemption will come with lightning speed. Or further on in Yeshayahu, Hashem says, Ashreka lahem akaptzeim, ki beditem v'rabo kamo rabu. I will whistle for them and gather them together, for I will redeem them, and they shall increase and continue increasing. So whistling is not just an ordinary act. Whistling is a sign of the redemption. I found the most bizarre Gemara that talks about, it's in a section talking about which birds are kosher and which birds are not kosher, and which birds can be trapped on Shabbat and which birds cannot. And it talks about a bird called the Rachem. Rachem means mercy. Why is it called Lama Nikra Shemo Rachem? Why is it called Rachem? Kivan Shabbat Rachem Bo Rachamim La'olam. Since the Rachem bird came, Rachamim is coming to the world. Amar Rabbi Bibi Bar Abaya, Hu Dichtiv Imiti Va'avid Sarak Shrak Begimre Iyativ A'ara V'Sarek Ata Mashicha Shnemar Asreka Lahem Ba'Kaptzeim. Why is it called Rachem? Because when the Rachem comes to Eretz Yisrael, this bird comes to Israel, what's it going to do? It's going to sit on the ground and it's going to make a whistling sound. What is the whistling sound? It makes a sound, rock, rock. And the Gemara says that when it sits on the ground and it says, and it whistles, rock, rock, this is the sign that Mashiach is coming. So what does the word rock, rock mean? What is this sound that it means? is that rock, there's only one God. When a non-kosher bird comes and recognizes that there is only one God, it's a sign that everyone is going to see it. And then I was thinking about and found the sentence that your father wrote, where he talks about whistling for the Rebbe for the first time. And he said, "Our final blast took off like the plaintive calls of a ram's horn. I was thinking of this as a folly ordained, a rehearsal for redemption," when the Rebbe paused. And so, your father knew that, your father knew, you know, when they don't like the talk, they let you know. So, it was clear that the Rebbe could have asked people to do something else. He could have asked them to clap their hands. He had on occasion asked people to chant, "Hoorah, hoorah." He could have done any of these things. But when he asked him to whistle, it was a sign to bring Mashiach closer. Now, if you know anything about physics, that a sound wave in physics never entirely disappears. It continues on forever. We may not have the tools to hear it, but that sound wave continues. So somewhere out there, your father's whistling is going out into the galaxy someplace, still bringing the redemption one step closer.
Beautiful.